Before I dive into this insane story, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy crazy real-life drama, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what I'm about to tell you. So, here's what happened. I was just a normal woman dealing with normal car problems, or so I thought. My mechanic, who I'd trusted for years, suddenly threw the most ridiculous, baffling ultimatum at me. He said he wouldn't fix my car again, not unless his wife said he owned it. Let that sink in. At first, I laughed. I thought he was joking. But no. Dead serious. And it only got worse from there. Let me backtrack a bit, because context matters. I've been going to this same mechanic, let's call him Dave, for the last 4 years. Dave's shop is this little family-run place, nothing fancy, but he's always been honest with me. He'd fix minor things, never overcharge, and even call a week later to make sure the car was still running smooth. We weren't friends exactly, but we had a good customer-mechanic relationship. I trusted him. So when my car started making this rattling noise, kind of like a soda can bouncing under the seat, I didn't hesitate to bring it to Dave. I dropped the car off in the morning, like usual. Dave gave me the same half-smile he always did, scribbled on a notepad, and said he'd call me later that day. Standard procedure. By late afternoon, I still hadn't heard from him, which was weird. I texted. No reply. Then around 6 p.m., I got a call. Not from Dave, but from a woman. She introduced herself as Linda, Dave's wife. Her tone? Cold. Short. And I'll never forget what she said. You need to stop bringing your car here. My husband won't be working on it anymore. Not unless I say he owns it. What? I was so confused I couldn't even speak at first. Did she mean own as in legally? Like a title transfer? Or was this some twisted metaphor? I asked calmly, what do you mean by own it? She just repeated it. Slower. Sharper. He will not touch your car again unless I say he owns it. Then she hung up. No explanation. No chance for me to respond. Just click. End of conversation. I stood there in my kitchen staring at the phone like I was in a dream. Or a prank show. I tried calling Dave directly. Twice. No answer. Straight to voicemail. So I did the only thing I could think of. I drove back to the shop the next morning, hoping to get some answers. Dave wasn't there, but his assistant, Mark, was. Mark is this lanky, awkward guy who avoids eye contact, but he's always been helpful. When I asked where Dave was, Mark's face went pale. He's not available, he muttered. That was it. No explanation. No small talk. Just awkward silence and shifting feet. I decided to leave the car there and wait outside. I knew Dave would eventually show up. And after about an hour of me awkwardly scrolling on my phone in the parking lot, he finally did. The moment he saw me, he sighed like a man who'd just stepped into a courtroom. Look, I can't fix it, he said before I even opened my mouth. I asked why. I reminded him that I've been a loyal customer, that I always paid on time, that this was completely out of left field. And then, he dropped the line that would echo in my head for days. Linda thinks I've been too close to you. She says unless she says I own that car, I'm not allowed to fix it. Now I was getting nervous. What did being too close even mean? I barely spoke to Dave beyond car repairs. I never flirted, never did anything inappropriate. I was always friendly, but strictly professional. I told him that. I said, Dave, I don't understand. I've done nothing wrong. And he nodded like he knew. I know, he said. But Linda doesn't believe that. She thinks you're using me to get free work, or something more. And until she's convinced otherwise, I can't help you. It was like being punished for something I didn't even do. At this point, I was torn between being angry and just heartbroken. This was someone I trusted. Someone I supported. I even recommended Dave to all my friends. And now he was acting like I was some manipulative temptress out to steal his labor. I said, "You know this isn't fair, right?" He nodded again, but said nothing. Just walked past me, unlocked the shop, and disappeared inside. I stood there alone in the parking lot, more confused than ever. I got in my car and drove away, the rattling noise now joined by this overwhelming sense of betrayal. Over the next few days, I debated what to do. Do I find a new mechanic? Do I try to talk to Linda? Do I demand an explanation? Or do I just let it go? But then, Linda made the next move. She messaged me. On Facebook. Out of nowhere. Her message was short, but it said everything. "You knew he was married. Stop playing dumb." That message sent me into a full-on spiral. Now it wasn't just about a car. Now I was being accused of something. Flirting, manipulation, an affair, none of which ever happened. I showed the message to my sister, who immediately said I should block Linda and move on. But I couldn't. Something about it all felt unfinished. Like if I didn't clear my name, I'd always have this shadow hanging over me. So I made a decision, a bold one. I was going to talk to Linda. Face to face. I messaged Linda back and asked if we could meet to talk. I kept it polite, respectful. Surprisingly, she agreed. We met at a local coffee shop 2 days later, and I'll admit, I was nervous. When she walked in, I expected to see anger. But what I saw instead was pain. Deep, heavy pain in her eyes. She sat across from me, crossed her arms, and waited. I started by telling her I never intended to cause any issues between her and Dave, that I respected their marriage. But her response stunned me. "You weren't the first." That sentence alone made my stomach drop. What did she mean? Linda explained that over the years, Dave had developed a pattern. He'd get a little too friendly with certain customers, mostly women. She never had concrete evidence that he cheated, but there were signs. Late hours, mysterious texts, a weird energy when she visited the shop unannounced. She said she confronted him multiple times, but he always brushed it off. "It's just work," he'd say. "You're being paranoid." But then she noticed something new. He'd talk about me. At first, just in passing. Then more often. More warmly. "She's the best customer I've got. She brought cookies to the shop. She actually listens when I explain things." To Linda, it sounded less like work and more like admiration. When I heard that, I almost cried. Because in her shoes, I might have felt the same way. But I told her the truth. I never had any intention to come between them. I brought cookies once, yes, but I brought them for the whole shop. I listened because I appreciate good service. I was friendly because that's who I am. But that didn't matter to her. "You weren't the first woman to say that," she told me, her voice low. "And every time, it starts the same. Innocent, respectful, friendly. Then it turns into something else." I felt so helpless. I didn't want to be part of a pattern, but now I was. Then she said something that really stuck with me. "I don't hate you," she said. "I hate that I had to step in at all. That he couldn't draw the line himself." That's when I realized this wasn't really about me. Not entirely. I was a symptom of a bigger issue in their marriage. A lack of boundaries. A lack of trust. And unfortunately, I had been dragged into the middle of it without even knowing. I told Linda I was sorry, not for something I did, but for the pain this situation was clearly causing her. She nodded, finally letting her shoulders relax a little. Before we ended the conversation, I asked her one last thing. "What did you mean when you said he couldn't fix my car unless you said he owned it?" She smiled, but not in a happy way. "He always says that the things he works on, he has to own. That if he doesn't take full responsibility for it, It's not worth his time. So I told him, fine. If you're going to keep helping her, then act like you own the damn car. Register it. Insure it. Pay for her gas too, why not? It was sarcasm, clearly, but he took it seriously. That's when he stopped answering my calls. That's why he ghosted me. I thanked her for being honest. She thanked me for not screaming or storming out. We didn't hug. We didn't promise to stay in touch. It was just closure. Weird, awkward closure. When I left that coffee shop, I felt this strange mix of relief and sadness. I hadn't done anything wrong, but somehow I was still tangled in someone else's mess. I went home and immediately started looking for a new mechanic. I didn't want to deal with Dave or Linda ever again. But guess what? That wasn't the end. Because Dave showed up at my apartment 3 days later. He knocked on my door around 8 p.m. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the best of me. He looked tired, worn out, like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. I let him in, mostly because I wanted to hear what he had to say. He sat down on my couch and didn't speak for a full minute, just stared at the floor. Then he said, "I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. I just waited. And then he explained everything. His marriage was falling apart. He had been crossing emotional lines with clients for years, not physically, but emotionally, and he didn't realize how far it had gone until Linda forced him to face it. He said I was never inappropriate, never flirty. But I was the one that made Linda snap. "She sees how I talk about you," he said, "and it scares her, because I don't even realize I'm doing it." He told me he admired me, my kindness, my trust in him, but he admitted that admiration had turned into something else. He started looking forward to our conversations too much, started thinking about me outside of work. Not in a creepy way, he insisted, but in a way that crossed emotional boundaries he shouldn't have crossed. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. He told me he was going to therapy, that he and Linda were trying to rebuild things, and he asked, very respectfully, if I'd consider coming back as a client someday. "If things get better, maybe we can start over," he said. And you know what? I said no. Not because I was angry, but because I realized I deserved better. I deserved a professional relationship that didn't blur the lines. I deserved to feel safe. I told him I hoped he and Linda could work things out, but I wouldn't be back. He nodded. He understood. And then he left. After the door closed, I sat on the couch for a long time, processing everything. What started as a simple car repair turned into a whirlwind of emotional chaos, accusations, and revelations. I never expected to be part of someone's marriage problems. I never wanted to be. But somehow, just by being kind, I became a symbol of something deeper, a fracture in someone else's relationship. And while none of it was truly my fault, I learned something important through it all. Kindness is good, but boundaries matter. Even in the smallest interactions. Especially in them. In the days that followed Dave's visit, I found myself replaying every detail of the past few months. Every conversation. Every appointment at his shop. I went over them again and again, looking for some kind of signal I might have missed, something that would have warned me that all of this was coming. But there was nothing. No hint of danger. No sense of impropriety. Just kindness. Professionalism. At least from my end. And that realization, knowing I had done everything right but still ended up in the middle of someone else's emotional storm, was frustrating beyond belief. I wasn't angry at Dave. Not really. I was just exhausted. Drained. Like I'd been walking through a storm I never saw on the forecast. And I didn't deserve to get soaked. I told a few close friends about what happened. One of them said, It's kind of flattering in a messed up way. But it didn't feel flattering. It felt like being used as a mirror for someone else's unresolved issues. Like my friendliness had been taken out of context and weaponized in someone else's war. I kept thinking, how many other women had gone through this? How many of them were punished for simply being decent? There's something incredibly lonely about being accused of something you didn't do, especially when the accusation is rooted in someone else's insecurity. And yet, I didn't hate Linda. I didn't even hate Dave. I just hated that any of this happened at all. I hated the loss of a space where I once felt safe. Eventually, I found a new mechanic, Maria. Yes, a woman. Her shop was clean, efficient, and her team treated me with complete professionalism. No awkward glances. No strange conversations. Just honest work. And for the first time in months, I felt calm. No tension when dropping off my car. No second-guessing my words or my tone. Just service. It was such a relief to exist in a space where everything was straightforward. No emotional subtext. No broken boundaries. Just business. And that made me realize something powerful. We, as women, often feel responsible for managing the emotions of the men around us, even when we shouldn't have to. For a long time, I kept wondering if I had done something wrong. Was I too nice, too trusting, too generous? But that's exactly the trap. Society teaches us to shrink ourselves, to apologize for being approachable, to carry the weight of other people's discomfort. But I decided I was done with that. I will not apologize for being kind. I will not take responsibility for how someone else interprets my behavior when I've been clear and respectful. If someone crosses a boundary because of their own projections, that's their issue to solve, not mine. And certainly not something I should have to pay for in emotional distress or social shame. I think about Linda sometimes. I wonder if she and Dave made it through. If therapy helped. If the marriage became something healthier. I truly hope so. Because I don't believe either of them are bad people. Just broken in places they never addressed. I was the spark, but not the fire. They were already burning long before I ever walked into that garage. And part of me hopes Linda understands that now. That she no longer sees me as a threat, but as someone who accidentally wandered into a mess she didn't cause. And part of me hopes Dave really does change. That he learns to appreciate kindness without blurring lines. That he sees women not as emotional caretakers, but as equals. Sometimes, we get caught in stories that aren't ours. We become side characters in someone else's drama. And the hardest part is not letting those moments define us. I won't lie, this experience made me question a lot about myself. It made me paranoid about how I interact with people. I started overthinking every word, every gesture, wondering how I'm being perceived. But slowly, I'm unlearning that. Reclaiming my space. Reclaiming my kindness. I still bring cookies to shops, because that's who I am. I still ask people how they're doing, because I care. But now I also protect my peace. I set firmer boundaries. And I walk away the moment I sense something off. There's power in walking away. In choosing not to engage with chaos that doesn't belong to you. That's what this story ultimately taught me. You can be kind and still say no. You can be generous and still protect yourself. Those things are not opposites. They're complementary. And honestly, I think that's a lesson a lot of people, especially women, need to hear. We are allowed to be soft and strong, open and cautious, kind and assertive. We do not owe anyone emotional labor, especially not at the expense of our own mental health. Not in relationships, not in friendships, and certainly not in business. Looking back, the phrase, "he won't fix your car unless I say he owns it," still makes my blood boil. Not because it was absurd, though it was, but because of what it represented. Ownership, control, power dynamics, none of which should exist in a simple service transaction. That phrase turned a normal situation into a twisted metaphor for the emotional tension brewing in their marriage. And for a while, it made me feel powerless. But now I look at that phrase and laugh, not because it's funny, but because I've taken the power back. I am no longer a pawn in someone else's insecurity. I'm the author of my own boundaries. If you've ever found yourself in a similar situation, where your kindness was misread, or you were dragged into someone else's mess, please know this: you're not alone. And you're not to blame. We don't get to control how others perceive us, but we do get to choose how we respond. And I hope you choose peace. I hope you choose clarity. I hope you never let guilt silence your voice or change the best parts of who you are. Because people will project. They will assume. They will misunderstand. But that's not your burden to carry. Just be clear. Be kind. And when necessary, walk away. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. I know it was a lot, but sometimes life is a lot. And if you found this story relatable, helpful, or even just interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me keep sharing these personal, honest stories, and maybe, just maybe, help someone else feel a little less alone in the process. So hit that subscribe button, drop a comment if you've ever dealt with something similar, and don't forget to like the video if you made it this far. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and most importantly, stay grounded in who you are. You don't need anyone's permission to own your story.